JD Vance calls himself a reasonable moderate between pro and anti-Israel extremes, saying he's advocated for a pragmatic relationship based on shared interests with Israel. Let's take a look.
Like France or like the United Kingdom, we're going to have disagreements with them. We're going to have agreements with them. There are areas where we're going to have similar interests and areas where our interests are going to diverge. So my approach to this is to say, you know what, when we're partnered, great, let's work together. And we're not, let's just be honest about it. And for that, people attack me for being an anti-Semite or anti-Israel, and they don't see the writing on the wall that I'm actually just the guy advocating for a normal relationship with a normal country.
He's the most normal guy out there, man. He's just a guy. He has the best position on this. I love that he's trying to tailor this in a way where he doesn't get too much blowback from the pro-Israel lobby, because he obviously has aspirations of higher office, while simultaneously maintaining his credibility as an Israel critical guy. It's or get off the pot time, buddy. And of course, he's not going to be able to walk that line. He's going to come across like these annoying Democrats. Yeah, he's like, I'm moderately in support of Israel's genocide, but also kind of critical of it.
Why is Israel losing? Why is Israel losing American public opinion?
Well, the narrative is that Israel has a very disproportionate effect on American politics.
Yeah, I see that. I see that narrative. I mean, I actually think that...
Look, this stuff is not convincing at all. It's not going to be convincing at all for many people. You don't have to be like a brilliant understander of foreign policy to recognize that this is untenable. Americans, by and large, do not like that Israel is receiving this level of aid, this level of financial support, and this level of political support. Americans absolutely hate that Israel also gets to have a say in domestic policy. Israel gets to have a say on whether you can criticize it or not. He's hitting the Mallory McMorrow lines. He's trying to Mallory McMorrow-ify his position amongst the Republicans, knowing full well where the Republicans are going. Young Republicans are done. They're done with Israel. It's over. It's just the old base that is obviously the most reliable voting bloc, the evangelicals and the like, that are still the only group of people in this country that show support to Israel by, Democratic Congress levels. If we're looking at, who supports Israel the most, obviously you got the old evangelicals. And then on top of that, you have Hakeem Jeffries and every other Republican and most of the Democratic congressional representatives. Every single person in the Senate as well. Pretty much every single person in the Senate. So I don't even know who this is for. I guess he just wants to position himself as like Israel critical for his presidential aspirations. But I don't know how you make it out of the Republican primary with that attitude, especially given that young Republicans are not exactly a reliable voter bloc anyway. It's always the old Republicans that are voting for the Republican Party.
Do they try to influence American politics? Yes. But like I said earlier, a lot of other countries do. I think
to the extent that Israel does,
I think some are better at it than others. I think the Israels are definitely more effective at it than most, but I wouldn't say that they're the...
Oh, everybody does it, dude. Really? Everybody does it?
I just think you have to be self-aware about it. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's a country of 9 million people. We have 330 million people. And so, of course, they're going to try to persuade Americans. They're going to try to move Americans in one direction or another. I think that's just the nature of the beast.
But it's more than that. The concern is that they're spying on American politicians, that they're...
Yeah, East Timor, the worst influencer of American politics. Albanian PAC is influencing American politics big time. Estonian PAC. Nobody ever talks about how much influence the Estonia PAC wields on American foreign policy, on American domestic policy. There is no comparison. You can cry anti-Semitism until cows come home. Every American is aware of it. Even people who are pro-Israel are aware of the tremendous amount of power that the Israel lobby holds on not only American foreign policy, but domestic policy as well. Cat's out of the bag.
There's concerns about funding. There's concerns about influence. There's concerns about whether or not politicians are... whether they're aligned with Israel or whether they're aligned with the United States first.
Well, there's certainly, I definitely get those concerns, but my sense is that the way that all foreign influence works in the United States is people try to manipulate American public opinion. And then from manipulating a public opinion, they try to get the outcomes that they want.
Oh, okay. So this is his way of saying, no, this is how Qatar influences American politics. There's no comparison between Israel and what Israel does on U.S. politics versus any other country. And anyone who tries to say that that's not the case is obviously lying, but also lying in such a hilarious and easily disprovable way that most people understand. That I don't even understand why you're trying to say this. Like, why are you even lying like this? You're just only destroying your credibility. What credibility you think you are trying to develop here, you're going to destroy it.
Meaning American leadership, allows that influence to affect their judgment and to affect what they are advocating for. That's what really bothers me. People are always going to try to influence the United States of America, whether they're allies of ours or whether they're enemies of ours. But again, when I open up the pages of Time magazine and I see that there's a literal foreign influence campaign being funded to tank the very deal that I was pursuing.
He's talking about Brad Parscale. Former Trump administration official Brad Parscale is a now foreign registered agent for the state of Israel and is getting people in Salem Media, which is the evangelical Christian media network. Time wrote about him. Trump's ex-campaign manager is running an Israeli influence operation targeting the MAGA base. His name is Brad Parscale. They're paying money to Scott, or not just Scott, sorry. They're paying money to Salem Media Figures, the evangelical Christian media network, by way of Brad Parscale to try and manipulate Trump supporters into being pro-Israel.
And oh, by the way, many of the people who were receiving that money were actually attacking me in completely dishonest ways. You know, my response to that is, well, go to hell. I'm going to do what I have to do for the American people. I represent Americans first.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't even have confidence in the Democrats that are trying to present themselves as anti-Israel. So if you think I'm going to trust JD Vance, you're delusional. I mean, Democrats are also trying to do their rat operation right now. It's just that Republicans don't even need to do too much of a rat operation against people who are Israel critical in their ranks, because the Israel critical people in their ranks are marginal.
So just take the Strait of Hormuz, like the narrowest, but in some ways the most important part of this back and forth right now. Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway. To the extent you shut it down, you shut down 25% of the world's energy supply. Okay? Joe, you could take $100,000 and go buy a bunch of drones on the black market and post yourself on an island in the Strait of Hormuz or near it, and you could fire drones at those ships. Okay?
Oh, wow. Look at that. JD Vance talking about how to do terrorism. Get his ass, Laura Loomer. This was a big attack against me from the Canary mission, that I was teaching people how to do terrorism for verbatim explaining this exact same thing that he's saying. Laura Loomer wanted me to go to Gitmo for this.
Okay, we can do that. We can drop a lot of bombs, but what does that accomplish if there's still a crazy person who's still unwilling to shoot a few drones at the Strait of Hormuz? What the president has done, I think very, very capably, is said, we're going to use military force in this situation when it's connected to something we're trying to achieve. So if you shoot at ships, we're going to shoot at the facilities at which you used to shoot at the ships. But we're not just going to do something open-ended indefinitely. We're not just going to bomb and bomb and bomb. We're going to try to use our military force as one of the many tools that we have to solve the problem. And obviously,
it's so funny that he's having this conversation with Joe Rogan when he should be having this conversation with Donald Trump, the president. Obviously, he's here to do this good cop, bad cop. I'm in favor of a ceasefire. I'm trying my very best, but there's outside forces that are stopping me. A big part of the reason why he's saying this also is because he wants to run for president. He knows where the winds are blowing and he wants to get ahead of it.
If you actually look at what they're proposing, they just want the military campaign to go on forever, and they can't actually identify what it is that they're trying to accomplish. None of them can identify what it is they're trying to accomplish. And I read two things between the lines. I think some of them want us to accomplish a complete change in the government of Iran, to topple the clerics and to replace those clerics with somebody who's, much friendlier. But look, what is our experience with doing that? It's
not
awful.
good.
It's not good, right? And so, if the Iranian people want to rise up and change their government.
This reads as him dunking on Trump. I know that Republicans have tremendous cognitive dissonance for the most part, and they don't think that Trump is capable of doing anything wrong, and therefore he can just basically unload into Trump, and yet most people will assume he's not talking about Trump. But this is literally just him campaigning against Donald Trump and the way that Trump has handled the crisis that he started.
Libya failing and the collapse of Libya is a lot of what's fueled the migrant crisis in Europe as well, correct?
Exactly. That in Syria, another failed state that was created by bad Middle Eastern policy. So there is precedent for the United States doing this, Every time that it has happened, it's caused a refugee crisis, it's caused a spike in terrorism, and it's also, not incidentally to the moral considerations, it's led to a lot of innocent civilian deaths.
Now, what was the talk about? I think the number was like $300 billion in concessions to Iran to rebuild. And
yeah, so this is another just bullshit argument that the critics made against the deal. And again, like just to back up a little bit, this is my own little hobby horse, but look, the coalition that Donald Trump piloted to the 2024 election campaign, it was a landslide. We won 7 states. It was historic. Nobody, certainly no Republican.
Marginal victory, by the way, regardless, on an economy election where everyone was screaming bloody murder about the economy. Marginal victory. It was not a mandate. I guess the only thing that was unprecedented was the fact that Republicans won the overall vote for once. First time in a long time, folks. First time since 2004. That's a big deal.
We'd like to invest in rebuilding their country. Now, whether they change their behavior is something that's going to be determined over the long term, right? We want to see real changes. We want to see them to stop funding terrorist organizations. And also, of course, none of that money comes from the United States.
Here's why this wishy-washy, in between the lines bullshit doesn't work, because Donald Trump ripped apart the JCPOA. Donald Trump is literally Israel's biggest blood boy. Donald Trump is as big as a blood boy to Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel as JD Vance is to Peter Thiel. So obviously it doesn't matter what you say because he's done everything that you're currently being critical of. And it's weird because this interview is not taking place during the MOU. This interview is being released right now, which means that you know what Trump is saying and doing. Last night he went on Fox News and said the war continues. We're going to keep pummeling. We're going to keep destroying Iran. We're going to keep doing it. It's unbelievably inconsistent. But it also makes me wonder, like, who is this for? Who is this for? What Republican watches this and goes, yep, this makes sense to me. I love Trump, but I hate guys that are pummeling Iran and don't want to do diplomacy.
There's just so much bullshit there when what I'm actually trying to do is accomplish what the President of the United States told me to accomplish, which is a settlement of this that accomplishes our objectives. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. We have the free flow of oil and gas. And like, I should be clear,
this coming right after Donald Trump said Iran are scumbags and cannot be negotiated with makes this conversation all the more funnier. Of course, Joe Rogan is not a capable vessel to have this conversation. He can't just be like, well, Trump said last night that, Iranians can't be dealt with. Like everything you've described so far, Trump verbatim said last night. Like, are you at odds with Trump?
Right now, Israel is losing the public opinion battle in the United States of America. It is a simple and obvious fact. Donald Trump has said that publicly. It's a simple and obvious fact.
Why do you think that is?
Well, let me finish this point.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, my attitude towards this is Israel is an ally. Like France or like the United Kingdom, we're going to have disagreements with them. We're going to have agreements with them. There are areas where we're going to have similar interests and areas where our interests are going to diverge. So my approach to this is to say, you know what? When we're partnered, great, let's work together. And we're not, let's just be honest about it. And for that, people attack me for being an anti-Semite or anti-Israel, and they don't see the writing on the wall that
I wonder if there's any way to exploit the friction between JD Vance and Marco Rubio as like who will be the torchbearer of the MAGA movement, like who will carry the MAGA movement next. I wonder if there's any way to exploit that on Cuba, because Marco Rubio is obviously spearheading the Cuba initiatives and JD Vance is supposed to be this anti-interventionist. I just don't think he's a genuine person, so I don't know if that's even exploitable, but could be a really interesting to even get some kind of friction, to even get some kind of difference in communication. But I don't know.
Look, do they try to influence American politics? Yes. But like I said earlier, a lot of other countries do. I think
to the extent that Israel does,
I think some are better at it than others. I think the Israelis are definitely more effective at it than most. But I wouldn't say that they're the only effective country by any means.
Like Joe Rogan is the dumbest guy we know. And he's even like, to the extent that Israel manipulates American elections and has a unbelievable influential capabilities over American domestic affairs? Of course not. Nothing comes close. So even the dumbest guy knows.
You should be frustrated at American leaders who are, persuaded by this, affected by this. countries are going to do what countries do. I really don't. It doesn't bother me that Qatar tries to influence the United States of America, and they do. I like a lot of the Qatar.
Dog, what the are you saying? This is like when I get a Democratic rep on and I'm like, do you believe that Hamas deserves an Iron Dome? And they say yes. It's awesome. It's my favorite thing when a guy is trying to be like, well, everybody influences American policy, like the Qataris. And I love it. It's like, dude, just say Israel's influential and it's bad. Why would you say it's awesome that Qatar is also influencing American politics? That's so dumb. Because guess what? Now you pissed off everybody. The pro-Israel side went, see, he admitted it. Qatar is actually the puppet master behind American decision making, and they're pissed off. Most people are going to be like, dog, there is no level of control that Qatar has over American policy in comparison to Israel. The overwhelming majority of people think you're stupid for saying this. You didn't win anybody over. Everybody thinks you're wrong for this statement. People look at this and go, I don't want any country influencing American politics. I want Americans to influence American politics. What the are you saying? Which is the normal position. This is a level of like moral consistency that you can only arrive at if you only talk to DC people and you have decided that you have this like very strange attitude, very strange outlook on how people look to foreign nations and the level of influence that they have over American politics.
I think there are a lot of social media campaigns that definitely influence Americans and affect Americans. Do I think that it's been dispositive on any particular issue? Like, I think that's a much more difficult question.
Do you think that we would have started this war in Iran without the influence of Israel?
I think the president, completely separate from any influence from Israel, believes very strongly, and again, I agree with this, that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon.
Right.
Oh my God, Joe, remember How to Be a Good Interviewer? This is the one thing he locks in on. For years and years, as the #1 Joe Rogan head, I've always talked about how Joe operates, right? Joe is very malleable. Joe will agree with everything that his guest is saying. That's why he's such a good interviewer in general, because he is. He's a fairly interesting interviewer, and if he has interesting people on, then it's like actually a fun conversation. There are certain things that he hyperfixates on. As the Joe Rogan Whisperer, the only time where I've ever heard Joe push back on guests is when it comes to weed and when it comes to like DMT and stuff. And last but not least, after COVID, when it came to vaccines and COVID related. Nowadays, Joe Rogan has added a third or fourth thing to his rotation, which is Israel's influence over American politics. Oh, the other one was trans athletes. That's right. Trans athletes. That's another one. He will always debate his guests on trans athletes, weed, and vaccines. Even his friends, like long-term friends, he will argue endlessly on. Now he's got another thing, which is Israel. It's clear. That's why he's not giving up on this Israel, where he's like, well, don't you think it's like a lot of influence?
Do you think he would have continued with the most recent campaign if it wasn't for the influence of Israel?
Yes, I do.
Really?
I do. Yeah. Look,
Why
I mean, I think again, and I see this, and I see it even from people that are in our coalition, and this would be my flip side to the hawks who have been attacking me or the president mercilessly over negotiation. I would sort of turn this back on some of the doves or some of the realists who have been attacking the president of the United States.
The doves? Those are the peace people?
Peace people.
That's what you call them, the
hawks
doves?
And doves. You never heard that phrase?
I've heard hawks. I've heard hawks. I don't think I've ever heard doves.
Hawks and
I'm not going to say anything. It's fine. He doesn't know peaceful doves. That doesn't determine how dumb he is. This guy's one of the top minds in American politics, man.
or whether you agree or disagree with the decision to launch the campaign Epic Fury to begin with, the idea that Donald Trump is being like blackmailed is crazy to me. Because again, I see the way that he makes decisions. I see the way that he processes this stuff. Like the idea that he picks up the phone with anybody and says, hey, like I'm going to take orders from you. No, that's just not how Donald Trump operates.
Could you understand, though, why people would come to that conclusion, especially because of the Epstein files?
What do you mean?
Well, the Epstein files.
Oh my God. Okay, I take back everything I said. I take back everything I said about Joe Rogan. This is turning out to be one of the best interviews I've ever watched JD Vance take. Oh my God. He's so one note on this Israel that low key he's like, well, don't you think it's reasonable for people to think that like Israel has tremendous levels of control over American politics because there's a pedophilia blackmail ring that all of our societal elites are a part of? Good luck groiping your way out of that one, JD. Let's see how he weasels out of this.
Amount of resistance to those files being released, and that concerned a lot of people, because if you're talking about very wealthy, powerful people that were
I
engaged
take it back. I'm back on the Joe Rogan Experience tip. That's awesome.
in crimes.
I see. So you're basically saying like the fear is that whatever's in the Epstein files was used to blackmail like the administration into doing the Iran thing.
Or at the very least, the people that were involved in the Epstein files that didn't want them coming out had undue influence.
Well, again, like, say this with all candor, like, we absolutely screwed up the comms of the Epstein files. Like, we just did. But do I think the reason we screwed up the comms is because we were trying to hide something? No. I think the reason we screwed up the comms of the Epstein files is one, you know, Pam Bondi said, the client list is on my desk, right?
Well, they had binders. They were
100%.
This is such an indefensible position. So good luck to JD here. How do you explain this stuff? This is such a perfect story for Joe because it's like conspiracy theories, many of which are not even theories. It's just like real crimes. And it does tie back to Israel and he knows it. So he's just like, why won't the Epstein files be released?
But those binders were largely documents that had already been released, right? So here's, let me try to defend.
Purpose?
Dude, look at this. What is happening? Hey, yo. Joe's like, no, let's stay on this.
Let me try to.
Well, what was the
defend.
purpose of that performance?
Cook, Joe. Cook. I'm back on the Joe Rogan Experience tip. Look, and he knows it too. He went, got him.
Display of the Epstein files, and she was saying there's tens of thousands of hours of film.
I don't know what the purpose of it was, but I know that the effect of it was to make people mistrust the entire effort. And what I think was happening, look, I know Pam, I like Pam, I don't think there was anything malicious going on. I think Pam was trying to respond to the political moment. I think she overstated what we had and what we didn't have. And I think that she, got roasted for it publicly.
By the way, the reason why Joe is not giving up on this is because, like I said, this is one of his hyperfixations. It literally is right in the wheelhouse of conspiracy theories and stuff like that too. This is one of Joe's new hyperfixations. So obviously he's like, so yeah, what do you mean? Like, so why did Pam Bondi that up? We found our new 60 Minutes correspondent. Are you kidding me? Again, Larry Ellison would drone strike Joe Rogan.
So that happens. Okay. Epstein gets pinched. I think he goes to prison, or maybe this is when he was on house arrest. Mm-hmm. But like anything that existed from the 80s and 90s up to 2006, 2007, anything that existed that we didn't get back then was disappeared. Right. So like when people say, has what you've seen on the inside make you think that that Epstein never blackmailed people or that Epstein never engaged in broader sex trafficking? No, absolutely not.
Yeah, there's something really funny about like the entire Epstein saga is that like almost all of it happened under Donald Trump. The most consequential parts about Epstein getting pinched again, and even down to the guy who gave him a sweetheart plea bargain, Alexander Acosta, was Trump's labor secretary at the time and had to literally resign from his job at the time because everyone was like, wait a minute, why the is Trump's labor secretary the South Florida prosecutor that gave Jeffrey Epstein his sweetheart plea deal? What the is happening? That happened under Trump. And then all of this stuff is now happening under Trump too. How can you be an Epstein truther in any way, shape, or form and then be a Trump guy, JD?
As part of the effort, people say the president was forced into releasing the documents. Like, again, the idea that Donald Trump could not have killed that legislation, especially with the United States Senate, is a joke. He absolutely could have killed it. What did he do? He actually said, nope. We're going to release these files. He thought, he was annoyed by the story. He was annoyed by the Democrats accusing him of doing things bad. By the way, like, do I think there is I've never seen a single piece of credible evidence that the President of the United States engaged in wrongdoing with minors, ever. So, like when the president says the hoax,
Dog. The president literally had numerous, now public, closed door private meetings at the time with members in his caucus that he tried to actively threaten or convince to vote against the Epstein file revelations. He did that. So the idea that he didn't try to engineer the situation to stop the release of these files is nonsense. If Joe really means it, he'll ask about Ghislaine Maxwell. Yeah, that too.
you know, the courts have said that we have to redact certain things or we can't release certain files. But like we did release all these files. Did it take longer than it should have taken? Yes. But we did release these files. And again, the problem here is not like anything that's in the files or not in the files. The problem is, if you go back to the original investigation, it was designed in a way that was way too narrow. If there was a...
So a previous administration f***ed up the investigation. Got it. So why are there still millions of files that are unreleased? Why is that the case?
There's that piece of it. You know, I think there's a separate conspiracy that hasn't gotten covered as much, which is that Epstein actually... Okay. If you go back to the original Epstein guy was Les Wexner, okay, who Columbus, Ohio, was the wealthiest person in Ohio, maybe still is the wealthiest person in the state of Ohio. The thing that everybody in Columbus, I lived there for a time, knew about the Wexner-Epstein relationship is that Epstein was his tax guy.
He's a numbers guy. That's what it is. Jeffrey Epstein, best tax guy around. People don't understand how good he is. This guy was doing magic with the taxes. That's why randomly Les Wexner gave power of attorney over to this random dickhead. That's what it is. That's what happened.
The idea that some of the people who were engaged in the sex trafficking were also, you know, facilitating it as well.
So they were incentivized to get more girls.
Yeah, but yes, that's right. But the idea is that it's hard to sort of, it's sometimes a little bit of a gray area between, you know, some of the people who were alleged victims were also alleged co-conspirators.
He's literally like, some of these victims also did up things. But you know who definitely didn't? My big beautiful president, who's mentioned in the Epstein files up and down a million times over, who tried to stop it from being released. He's actually so perfect. This motherfucker will blame everybody, including the victims, before he just says, yeah, you know, it is a little suspicious that Trump is all over this. That's so awesome. Actually, Joe, the only Jeffrey Epstein victim is not the children, is not the women. It's actually Donald Trump. And that's a brave take that no one wants to say. The only person who was ever victimized by Jeffrey Epstein happens to be the president now. His name is Donald Trump. Thanks, man. That sounds awesome. This is not dissimilar in some ways to trying to constantly tie back Israel to Judaism. It is virtually impossible at this point to try to get people to look at the Epstein files, look at the Epstein situation, and then be like, well, Trump is actually infallible. He looks really good in all of this. Like, it's just not going to happen. You did it. You literally constantly ran on releasing the Epstein files and all this stuff. So how the do you think you're going to get away with it now? It just doesn't make any sense. You've tied it. You've tied those two things inseparably to one another. And Trump himself tied himself to the Epstein files inseparably. You're making your own job more difficult. You might as well just move on and try to talk about other and hope that people don't pair these two things together or forget about it. I cannot believe he said that Donald Trump is the only infallible victim of Jeffrey Epstein, pretty much. Even the victims, well, they themselves did some crimes.
And so what DOJ tried to do was kind of make that judgment as best they could and release as much as possible.
But it's clear that he was trying.
Also, here's the other side of the story, which, you know, not great for people who want to defend Israel. The other side of the story is that there are a lot of connections to Israel with Jeffrey Epstein. And not only that, but a lot of people already have this suspicion that American politicians are being blackmailed by Israel. Joe Rogan brought it up earlier. That's the reason why he's having this conversation about the Epstein files, because in his mind and in the minds of everyone that's like paying attention to this, he's trying to make the connective tissue between Israel and the unfathomable amount of influence they have, tying it back to Jeffrey Epstein. The average person at this point in the United States of America that pays like half attention to any of this thinks that the Epstein files are part of the reason why Donald Trump won't actually do anything about Israel, won't actually tell Israel to stand down. That's how they operate. And it's not like a super far-fetched conspiracy theory either, because some of the things that Donald Trump does with his relationship to Israel are so unfathomable and so against the direct and indirect interests of the United States of America that, like, you know, even we joke around about it here where we're like, oh, the first time Donald Trump talked about Israel, we're gonna start seeing some leaks. When something is inexplicable, people are gonna try to figure out a way to explain it, and it's sitting right there. It's sitting right there. So it's kind of tough for people to not make that assumption.
So there was something he was doing where he was trying to either influence people or compromise people.
Correct.
So it's not. There's some sort of an operation that was going on.
There is a story there, and you know, I will go to my deathbed believing there's a story there, but I can't prove it. And I promise you there's not some document that at least I'm hiding that allows us to prove exactly what was going on.
This would be a totally reasonable thing for basically any other human being to say, with the exception of the Vice President of the United States of America. There's like maybe maximum 100 people on the planet that can't say what you're saying right now. Oh, I'll go to my deathbed wondering what happened. You're the VP. You're the VP. What are you saying? It's like Ghislaine Maxwell being interviewed by Joe Rogan being like, I will never know what happened. It's like, you were there, Ghislaine. I think you know you were there. You were a part of it. And with JD Vance, it's like, if you're that confused, go the down to the files and take a look. That's what's so funny about it. He's like, Joe, between you and I too want some answers. Wow, really? You do? You want answers, don't you? That's interesting.
On and how.
He was also trying to get scientists, and this is one of the reasons supposedly
100%.
why he got that ranch in New Mexico.
So a friend of mine has this element. Okay, sorry. I should step back. Conspiracy theories. One of the ways you discredit a conspiracy theory, I thought about this a lot, is to try to hide it. Another way you discredit conspiracy theory is by flooding the zone. So one of the things I've tried to do when looking at all this stuff is to try to understand sort of where it fits in and to, you know, try to separate.
Dude, why is he doing this thing where he's like putting his arm around Joe and being like, Joe, you and I, we're both trying to figure out who is creating unnecessary hurdles for us to find out more. Bitch, you're the VP. You're not some random guy. You're not Duncan Trussell. What are you talking about? You want to figure out who did this. Don't do this. I'm just like you. You're not. You're not like Joe Rogan. You're not like me. You're not like an average American. You're the vice president who is looking at this and going, yeah, no, this is great. JD Vance sure convinced me. We're all just looking for answers, man. Joe, you and I, we're both looking for answers. I'm just as confused as you are. Go look.
One really interesting element of the whole Jeffrey Epstein saga. Okay, so he dies in 2019, right? This is at the very end of the first Trump administration. His death coincides very, very closely. This is not my observation. This is a friend, but I don't want to, reveal confidences here. It coincides very closely with the end of what you might call the era of censorship in academia. So back in 2019, 2020, we reached sort of peak academic censorship.
Oh, dude, he did it. He deployed the smoke grenade. Culture war, culture war, culture war. Joe was so close, and he had to hit him with the, well, you know who killed Jeffrey Epstein, actually? That's right, Joe. I didn't want to say it. Woke killed Jeffrey Epstein. Fantastic. Thank you. That's awesome.
He clearly had connections to the highest levels of American intelligence.
First, he said Epstein did woke. Then he said Epstein is connected to the highest levels of the American government and highest levels of the Israeli government. But watch how he ties it back. This is how the Israeli government, or at least the Likud government, talks about the Epstein files.
Epstein seemed to be connected to the elements of the Israeli deep state that were left of center. Like, I've always found that.
Yeah, see? He's doing the same thing. This is how Benjamin Netanyahu talked about the Epstein files. He literally said it was Ehud Barak. It's the woke libtards. Jeffrey Epstein is a woke libtard phenomena. We're done. I'm done with the Joe Rogan Experience.